Hello everybody and welcome back to SkySaga Alpha 8! Now, it is Tutorial Tuesday, but today we're not actually going to be talking about anything to do with tutorials. Today we're going to be talking about SkySaga itself, Alpha 8, where I think the game is going, and just basically doing an overall review of SkySaga Alpha 8, because we are currently around about 3 weeks into the alpha right now, and it is the least amount of SkySaga I have ever played since I got started all the way back in Alpha 3, and it's got me thinking about why I haven't been playing this much. Like, I love SkySaga, even in its current state, I still love SkySaga, but I'm just not as engaged and as gripped into the game as I used to be. So I thought that I wanted to do this video up to kind of give my thoughts and opinions, and hopefully, get a bit of a discussion going about where the game is and where the game's going and what's going to happen eventually with all of this stuff. Now, one thing I will say before I kind of start all of this, because this is going to be a bit of a long video of me kind of nitpicking things and all that kind of stuff. The dev team on this game are amazing. They really do listen to the community, and they really do try as hard as they can to put things in place where they can, and, they listen to our suggestions and our ideas and all that kind of stuff, and that is great. They are probably the best dev team I've ever seen in a game, or at least in an alpha game like this one. But yeah, so like I said, I haven't really been playing SkySaga all that much, and there's a lot of just little things and big things in Alpha 8 where a lot of it feels like one step forward, two steps back type of thing. So, and I will just give you a quick example, and we're going to get back to this point later on. So, the Standing Stone. Now, the Standing Stone is the key, pivotal, central point of this game, and personally, I love the design, I love everything about it, and in Alpha 8, you can move it, so that is the one step forwards in this case. You've got that one step forwards, you can move the portal, you can put it wherever you like, and that is absolutely awesome and amazing. Now, the one step back, or two steps backwards here, is the interface system. So the interface system, because you now have a choice of where you're going, and all of this kind of stuff, you're actually more limited in where you can go and what you can do in the game. So back in previous alphas, if you threw a light keystone or a common keystone or whatever it was called at that point in time into the Standing Stone, you could go to one of 3 or 4 places. Now we have one choice for that. So it's just a huge restriction on where you can go and how often you want to do that adventure, which for some people may not seem like a big deal. Those people out there who play very explorer-like, they will have bypassed the commons as quickly as they possibly could and gone straight on into the points where they actually have some more choice and they have some more stuff that they can do. And this is why we're going to get back to this point later on, is that this is something I need to talk about a little bit more when I actually start talking about how the game all clicks together and how all of the 3 guilds fit and mesh, or don't mesh, as the case may be. So yeah, I don't like this system. This is the other thing. This is all my opinions on the game and my opinions on where the game is currently going. Please, 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 if you disagree with me, let me know. Try and show me your point of view. I am quite happy to listen to people's opinions on this topic. I am just one person, I'm just one player, but this is where I see the game and where I see the game going and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to do this now because I know that, as I said before, the dev team are really good, and I know they have really, really big plans for this game. So I just kind of want to put this out there before lots and lots of things get added to the game, and the problems that I'm starting to see with the game kind of snowball to the point that they break everything. So really the main point here in the adventure is the Firehailer, and this is why I've come here, and I'm going to let that thing ring just for a second, because this is one of the key points here. This is another thing where it's kind of like one step forwards, two steps back. The Firehailer is good-ish. It adds a few things into that menu slot, which are really cool, but the biggest problem is that the actual thing itself is annoying and doesn't fit into the game aesthetically. So what I'm talking about here is, hey, like right now, it is just going to keep ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, and it is going to say one of about 3 things to me because I've come out into just a regular, normal adventure. Now, the thing that I do like about the Firehailer, and the one kind of step forwards, is the fact that it's being used so well to drive forwards the story and the mastery quest chains and things. Like, that is a really cool thing that has happened, but it's a thing where the devs have implemented something because it is really cool in one section and it is not really cool in other sections. So, as I said before, it's quite annoying, but also if we open this thing up, you have a look at the actual stuff that you get popping up here. Now, to me, the actual text block now looks very kind of 90s era tech type, like an old school cell phone, basically. You've kind of got these like wavy lines in the background and you've got little spiky sections on the outside here. And to me, that represents kind of a digital age type aesthetic. And SkySaga, at least up until this point in time, to me, SkySaga has had more of a steampunk aesthetic. So suddenly having this kind of digital aesthetic is a bit of a snap and a breakaway from where SkySaga has been before. So once again, it's kind of like, this is really cool, and the design of this thing is really cool, but it doesn't fit into the cool that is SkySaga. And I think this is kind of going to be the main point that I kind of focus on and push down here in this video, is that there's a lot of really cool things that are happening, but I'm not sure if all of the really cool things mesh together properly. And personally, I'm trying to go through and work out where they don't mesh and kind of highlight those things so that hopefully the devs can see this and see what I'm trying to talk about. And you guys can have a look at it as well and tell me if you think that this type of thing actually does sit in the game. I mean, obviously this thing is a pretty small detail, it's a small point, but it's one of those things that at this point in time, the game expands from where we are now. So if we start with small digital text pop-up boxes like this one, the next iteration of the alpha we can see more and more and more of those things come in. And what we end up seeing is you have half the game in a steampunk aesthetic and half the game in more of a cyberpunk aesthetic, which leads to a bit of a fracture in the game, or at least that's how I see this thing. So yeah, not only is this thing kind of annoying and it just beeps at you constantly for no real reason, like I said, when you come up on a structure or you come into a world, once you've seen that piece of text once or twice, you don't need to see it again. You understand what's going on. You've done a couple of adventures. That's it. Like, you don't need to keep seeing this thing pop up over and over and over again. And having done this and seen this and having this new aesthetic on it just kind of makes it not really fit and just be more of an annoyance to the game than an actual addition to the game. But yeah, so that's kind of my quick little thoughts on this guy. Now, the other reason we're kind of in here is because of mobs and the way mobs work, and the way mobs have been working for a little while now. So, once again, the devs have been pretty good at implementing people's suggestions. Oh, go away. The devs have been quite good at implementing people's suggestions, but one of the suggestions that has been made a couple of times from the last alpha and is still not quite there. Mob health. So, like I said, this has been kind of a thing that's happened more recently, I guess. It was in the last couple of alphas where basically this tiered system of mobs happened, where you've got like brown mobs and green mobs and then blue mobs and purple mobs and so on and so forth. And basically the only real difference is how much health these guys have. And these guys have just way too much health, especially when you start getting up towards the blue and purple mobs. Basically, the entire challenge is revolved around health, and it's not so much that the actual mob themselves is challenging, it's literally just a grind to knock that mob's health all the way down to the ground. Now, I mean, once again, this is my opinion, and I'm sure that there are some of you out there who are just like, oh, no, it's all about strategy and having the right weapons and all of that kind of stuff. But for me, it's always just felt like, even with the right weapons and everything like that, it's just a grind. You find one little strategy that works on every single mob, and then you just do the same thing over and over and over again until that ginormous health bar hits the ground. And yeah, I mean, it's not... It's okay, but it's one of those things that that's been talked about in the forums for a little while now, that mobs have too much health. And once again, we've made it to another alpha, and this level of health has persisted. And in fact, I honestly think it's got worse. I went through in my video the other day, and I was attacking a boss with this sword, because it's all I had at the time, and I did less than like 8% of his health, which is just absolutely insane. Because I mean, it was... Farhaler. It was just like, it was my very first mastery quest chain, and yes, sure, I shouldn't expect to be able to kill things easily with this type of weapon in the heroic forests. But at the same time, it was my first ever heroic, being that it was my first heroic mastery. It was my first mastery in the heroic section, so I didn't, like, and I still don't have good weapons for that system. Because even though I completed that, I got a piece of armor, I didn't get a weapon, which means that my next heroic mastery quest, which I will be going on pretty soon, I am still not going to be able to face down bosses, and the reason I'm not going to be able to face down bosses is nothing to do with how I fight, it's all to do with how much health they have. I mean, honestly, yes, you shouldn't be able to take down a big boss easily with this type of sword, but at the same time, it shouldn't take 200 hits to take down a big boss with this type of sword. And so just another final little piece of evidence here for the Farhaler, and it not really kind of fitting in with SkySaga's current aesthetic, is the way we teleport out. So we're going to teleport out to the City of First Light, where we're going to talk about a few other bits and pieces, and how they go, and how they fit into the game. But as we do that, we're going to watch the animation. So as we watch the animations, we're getting like 1s and 0s, which are kind of like a digital thing. So once again, it's more cyberpunk. Before I get into the real crux main point of this video, there's one other little thing that I really want to point out, and I've kind of been a little quiet on it over the last little while. I have kind of sort of mentioned in video a couple of times that I'm not so happy with it, but I haven't really fleshed out my thoughts yet on it on video. So that thing is the Settler's Dust, or the Settler's secret formula, as it were. So these things are a new addition to Alpha 8, and they are a completely unneeded, a completely unwanted restriction on building. Now, for those of you who don't know what they are and what they do and why they're so bad and why I'm annoyed about them, is basically they've been added at random almost to various different items in the game that you could build originally without Settler's Dust, and now they've just been randomly thrown in. And to everything that they've been thrown into, they add absolutely no benefit to the item. So, this bamboo table, for example, that I've opened up here, it is just a bamboo table. Like, adding the dust to it doesn't affect the actual model of the table in any way, shape, or form. It literally just makes it that little bit harder to create this one table. And the reason I say it's a little bit harder is because while you can buy those things in the shop, if you're a settler like myself, knots are a valuable resource for lots and lots of different reasons, and having to buy these things is a huge pain. You can also get them by ranking up and by logging in every day, but you still only get a small trickle stream of these things, which means that you are limited to the amount of stuff that you can build. And what it really does is it puts a clamp down on certain build palettes, which is a bit of a shame, because when you go out and look at adventures, there are no clamp downs, no restrictions on any build palettes out in adventures. Like this bamboo table, for example, is just a decor item in the jungle. It's just a regular thing that sits on the side and just exists. It's not a wow item, it's not a, oh my god, you can make a bamboo table because you've got lots and lots of settler dust item. It's just a table, and it's just a table that fits inside the jungle aesthetic. So having this arbitrary restriction on something that fits into the jungle aesthetic, where the jungle is 1/4 of all of the adventures that you can go and do, which means it is 1/4 of a player's build inspiration. That's just annoying, and nothing that I have seen so far, nothing that I've seen with this dust involved, makes me go, oh yeah, somebody's gonna go, wow, you can build one of those, that's awesome. Like, everything that has dust added to it, we've either had it before, or it's not a specialty item, it's not something that makes a player stop and go, wow, look at that thing that you put down on your island. Like, if you put a bamboo table like this on your island with a few books on top of it, people will walk past that. Like, it's needed to be there to add just a little bit more detail to a wall or to a corner or to a certain section of a build, but it's not something that somebody's going to go, oh my god, you put down a bamboo table, this is amazing. Right? And honestly, the Settler's Dust, it just gets to me in a big way because it just feels like a huge restriction to the amount of building that I am able to do in this game. And admittedly, I feel very strongly about this because I am a building person. Like, that is what I love doing in this game. Like, the one thing that actually kind of drew me into the game originally was the huge array of decor items, because I can build things and I can decorate them and they look half decent, whereas in other voxel games, this type of decoration doesn't exist, and you can't make it, and you can't put it down. So, SkySaga has a clear victory over those things. When I can build something like this, and I can put it down, and it makes the rest of the build look great, that is a huge thing in SkySaga's favor, and adding these dusts is basically saying, oh, you see this thing that you really like about the game? Yeah, you can only do that some of the time now. We don't like you doing that so much, just only do it a little bit. Just so that some people might come along and say, oh, look at that, you put down a bamboo table. But realistically, like I said before, it's not going to happen because the items that it's been applied to so far aren't special. They're not eye-catching. They're literally just a different palette to the regular, they're just a different palette to each other. That's basically what it is. And it's not something special. And unless you have an in-depth knowledge of the Chronicle and an in-depth knowledge of all of the recipes in-game, you don't really know how much effort has gone into building a bamboo table, for example. The only thing you see is the effort that goes into the build as a whole structure, which means that something like this, something that is a tiny little detail that sits in the corner, and it needs to be there to make the build look good, but you just kind of go, oh yeah, that's in there. Doesn't need to have restrictions placed onto it, doesn't need to be clamped down the way these items are currently being clamped down. Having said that, this is something that has been talked about on the forums a little bit. I just wanted to highlight it again. I wanted to put my thoughts down because I couldn't do a review of this alpha without talking about this. It's just, for me, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm not happy with it at all, and I haven't been building. I just haven't been building, because there are all of these things that I wanted to build and wanted to do, but, like, I can't even place down chests on my home island right now. Like, there is a couple of double chests that I want to build up and put on my home island, but I can't choose between two different colors of chests. In fact, let's take a quick look at my chests. So, I am trying to put down my large Urak chests right now. So, I've got some spots that I want to put these down on my home island, and I really want to put them down, but I don't know what colors are going to fit into the space that I'm looking at, which means I can't place this thing down, because while it doesn't say that it takes dust, it does actually take dust. Now, in a previous alpha, I could have just built both of them, placed them both down, go, oh, okay, I like this color and this particular arrangement, and then I could have built a couple more, and that would have been that. I would have been able to move on and keep building and keep doing things. But right now, I am stuck at this point because I don't really want to continue working on builds when I can't even get my simple chest storage system right. And I can't do that because I don't want to waste my dust. I don't want to waste the small amount of this precious resource that I have because there are bigger things coming, like there are bigger builds that I'm about to do, and I can't waste dust on something I'm never going to use when I have to use that dust in a big build. Like, it's just... it's probably just a mental thing for me. I just can't waste that dust, but it's also stopping me from moving forwards in building and settler stuff in general, just because this one stupid item has dust in it. And yeah, like I said, I kind of want to stop ranting about this a little bit because it's quite close to the surface for me. It's something that I really don't like. It is something the devs are aware of. It's something that they're working on. And basically all I really want to say here is that please just remove it. Like, if there are any devs watching this, please just remove the dust. Just scrap it completely, because it's destroying my ability to build right now. And I don't know if there's any other way I can say that. So now that I've gone through and kind of ranted about that, there is one kind of thing that is quite nice about the new Settlers stuff. So the Blueprint Trader and the Blueprint Studios. Now, I love the Blueprint Studios. These things are absolutely amazing. But once again, as I said before, this is the one step forwards, two step back thing. I've already talked about the two step back thing. The whole dust system is 2, 5, 7, 8, 15 steps backwards for me. The Blueprint Trader is the one step forwards here. It's really good. It's amazing to be able to go into your own little world and prototype some stuff up and just kind of test and see how things go. And admittedly, I haven't bought any blueprints yet because, once again, not to something that I use pretty much exclusively for buying secondary home islands and recipes. But it is a really cool thing, and even when you're not buying blueprints, the ability to go in and have blueprints and build things and test them out and kind of build something and try and get the proportions right without ever having to waste your own resources is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. The only slight minor thing that I would have to say here is that it almost got implemented too early. For this to exist, really, we actually needed a kind of currency almost for the game. And currency is not the right word. We kind of needed a bit of a market for the game, and we needed an idea of what things are rare and what things aren't. So what I'm really getting at here is that if you build something that contains a lot of rose iron or contains a lot of bile iron, I think is the light green iron right now, that is a complicated build. That is something that somebody's going to have to spend a lot of knots on, or is going to have to spend a lot of time collecting those resources and materials to do that build. But right now, it's more based on what you place down rather than how hard it is to get those things. So if you just built a 9x9 cube of grey iron and a 9x9 cube of blood iron, or whatever the red iron is right now, both of those things would be priced exactly the same in the Blueprint Trader, and yet the 9x9 cube of the red iron is a hell of a lot harder to get your hands on. And realistically, that blueprint should be worth more, because the blueprint system should be based on kind of how difficult things are to get. You kind of need to have that understanding that when you go in and you buy a really expensive blueprint, it's going to take a lot of time to get all of those materials. It's going to take a lot of effort to get all of that stuff ready to go. And you know that because you've spent a lot of money on your blueprint. Whereas right now, the way the current pricing system works, I don't think represents that well. Why we're in the hub now is actually to help illustrate my final point, or to talk about my main point for this video and my kind of main thoughts about Alpha 8. Alpha 8 is shattered, as far as I'm concerned. Well, I'm using shattered because, of course, the shattering is now a thing that has happened in SkySaga folklore. But what I mean by this is there is very, very clear lines between the Gladiators Guild, the Explorers Guild, and the Settlers Guild. And this is something that has kind of slowly been happening over the last couple of alphas, and personally I feel the game needs to come back together and mesh a little bit more. So what I'm talking about here is that we have the Gladiators Guild that has its own weapons and armor set. Now, that's fine. That should almost be a thing, because taking biome-specific weapons and armor into the Gladiators Guild doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The only problem is that now these things are expensive, which means that if you go into the Gladiators Guild, you make something, or you go through and you complete enough challenges and whatever, and you get given a recipe, you can't really take and use that recipe to go run Explorer's Quest with, because the price, the price for those weapons has gone up astronomically now. They're asking for, like 10 steel edges to go into a simple sword, which basically means you can only use it in PvP, because in PvP it doesn't actually get damaged. Every time you teleport out and teleport back in, the amount of damage the weapon took in PvP disappears, and it just kind of resets itself. So, while I can see that that is maybe a way of clamping down a little bit on how effective your weapons are out in Worlds, at the same time, it means that there is now a big, big divide between these two guilds. Because while being good at one of them makes you better at the other, being good at the other one does not make you good at the first one. That's the issue here, is like there's this kind of fracture that's starting to grow between these two things. And I honestly think it's just because of how expensive this Gladiators gear is now. And once again, I can understand the reason behind that, but at the same time, it leads to this little rift happening. And personally, I haven't done any Gladiators stuff. I've done very limited Gladiators stuff in this alpha. And usually I'll go in on my first couple of days, do a little bit of Gladiator stuff, find a few weapons that are okay, and I'll use them on my base level Explorer stuff until I can get my Explorer stuff to the point where I get better biome-specific weapons, and then I change over to my biome-specific weapons and I keep going. So, having this split suddenly start to happen means that I'm not going to play PvP, because the reason I was playing PvP, like, I enjoy PvP, but it's not something that I'm just going to come on and do. I need to have something outside the Gladiators Guild as a drive to do that and to keep doing PvP activities. I need something that I can then translate across into the rest of the game. I don't really want to play PvP if the only things I get out of PvP are more things for PvP. So yeah, that's the PvP and the Explorers Guild. Now, the Explorers Guild and the Settlers Guild are kind of undergoing the same thing, and it's a little bit to do with what we talked about all the way back at the beginning with the portal. So, when you're a settler, when you're doing lots and lots of building like I am, common worlds are your go-to worlds, because common worlds are relatively cheap in terms of like keystones and things, and you can get all of your colors available in that biome. Now, that was a really good thing when we had randomized keystones, because it meant that you threw something in, you got a random biome, and you got a random main adventure and a random dungeon at the end, underneath it. So there was something to explore every time. So maybe you were going in to mine up a whole bunch of brownstone. You would go in, you'd mine up your brownstone, you go, oh, I haven't seen this landmark in a little while. Sweet, I'm going to go over there, I'm going to finish the dungeon for this thing, because that's interesting. But right now, because of the way the portal has changed and the way the keystones have changed and how all of that has gone down, you can't really do that. Or at least you can do that, but you're going to see the same adventure pop up over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, which means that you're going to kind of throw in your keystones, you're going to mine out that brownstone, and you're going to leave again. You're not going to explore, you're not going to go through and do more exploring and more looking around and things, and you're not really going to do more things that rank up your explorer, because it's just not worth it. They're having the choice of the solitary adventure means that's all you've got. You've got that one solitary common world. Now, there are heroic worlds and the other worlds as well, but if you're literally only there for collecting materials and then you just decide that while you're in there you're going to go and do a bit of adventuring, you're not going to be throwing in heroic keystones and more, because not only are they more expensive, but they're more difficult to do. You need higher tier armor, you need higher tier weapons, and if your focus is on building, you're not doing those things specifically. So you want to be able to run lots and lots and lots of little common adventures and little common worlds to go through and get these things done. So realistically, this change pushes people from adventuring to find the materials and things that they want to buying secondary home islands to get the materials and things that they want. Because why would you bother throwing in keystones and going to the same adventure over and over and over again until you find brown stone, when you can just go out and buy a secondary home island from the Settlers Guild, which means that the Settlers Guild itself becomes a lot more self-contained and there's no meshing between the two anymore. And as an additional note to this, because of the removal of the daily guild keystones that you used to get, you now no longer get Settlers points and Gladiator points and Explorers points for going out and running an adventure, which means that, yeah, you're not seeing this kind of merging of ideas anymore. You're just seeing three very separate and distinct entities in the game. And while it's not a huge thing right now, these guilds and stuff are starting to drift apart, and I don't think that's the best idea for the game, because I honestly feel like the game is better when you're enjoying everything, when everything interlocks with each other, when going out and adventuring isn't going out and adventuring just for explorers things, it's for going out and getting things for settler, and it's for going out and getting experience for gladiator. And, you know, playing PvP isn't just about playing PvP, it's also about, you know, getting new weapons and new armor and things that look awesome that you can run around in, and, you know, maybe take on Explorers Guild stuff, maybe just wear into the hub and show off because you want to. So yeah, this is like I said, this is where I think the game currently stands, and this is where I think I see the game going. Want to. So one quick final point as I wrap this up. The other thing is that these quests haven't been updated in a long time. So these guys that give out the actual quests, and I'm talking about today's quests, not the actual like mastery quest train stuff, they haven't really been updated in quite a while. So that means stuff like this guy here, hand in 3 sky iron posts, doesn't make any sense anymore, because iron posts now contain the settler's dust. So basically what this quest is saying is hand in 3 rare items containing a rare dust with rare metal. And yeah, you're going to get a little bit more than if you hand in some of the slightly easier stuff to do, but it is not like the rewards for handing over 3 pieces of the rare and expensive settler's dust is not worth the small increase in XP that you get out of these things. So I guess the final thing here is that if there are any devs watching this, I love SkySaga and I love most of the things about SkySaga, and I know that there are lots and lots of big things coming up, but I just want to make sure that those things fit SkySaga and that they get implemented because they fit inside SkySaga. They're not implemented because they're a really cool idea, like being able to have a phone, which is what the Farhaler is in SkySaga. Like, the Farhaler as an idea, having this kind of niche-y, digitally piece of tech, is a really, really cool idea, but it's not a SkySaga idea. It's its own thing. I mean, you can reskin this, you can change that text box, you can make this back into a SkySaga idea, but the way it currently stands is a cool idea, it's just not a SkySaga aesthetic idea. Now, This has been probably quite a long video. It's been very rambly. It's been a lot of me talking about what I like and what I don't like. A lot more probably about what I don't like than what I do. But this is just my current thoughts and opinions and feelings on the game. Now, if you've made it this far, please tell me what you think of all of the stuff that I've talked about, what you think of the game, what you think of where it's going and how it's getting there. Because, like I said, these are just my thoughts and opinions. I really do want to hear what other people think about this, and I really do want to see counterpoints to some of the stuff that I've talked about, because at this point in time, I'm seeing a lot of things that are kind of starting to diverge from what I feel is the core essence of SkySaga, and if it keeps going along this path, the game is going to end up very disjointed and very fractured. But once again, that is just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think of all of this and everything that I've said in this video. Anyway, I hope you have liked that, and I will see you in the next video.